For 33,000 rupees, the Honor 20 gets you a 2.6 GHz octa-core processor, 6 gigs of RAM, an IPS LCD display that's 6.26 inches with an FHD Plus resolution, a quad camera setup, one primary 48 megapixel lens, a 16 megapixel ultra-wide lens, a 2 megapixel depth sensor, and a 2 megapixel macro lens. No headphone jack, a dual SIM tray with no memory card slot, a glass back, and a 3750 mAh battery with fast charging. Now, what does all of this mean, and is this worth your money? Let's start with the build and the material. Two things I love about this phone. It's all glass and it's so well sized. I mean, it's not too big, especially when I compare it to the Galaxy S10 or the Oppo Reno or the OnePlus 7 Pro. And so it's really easy to be held and used with just one hand, and we all like that. And because of its size and not so heavy battery, it's also pretty lightweight, so that's another plus. Now I've got the Midnight Black here, and I actually love this shade of black. It looks quite premium, very classy, and it's neither too dull nor too shiny. It's at a beautiful balance of both. Honor calls it dynamic holographic design glass back, but it's glass and it will attract fingerprints and dust, and you just have to deal with that. But of course, you can always slap on a case. The earpiece is right at the top and does not become a part of the display. So with that, you get a really big display area all the way to the edges, except for that punch hole camera in the front that I really like and feels something borrowed from the Samsung's Infinity O design. At the bottom there is a Type-C port for data syncing and fast charging, but they did remove the headphone jack and put in a Type-C to 3.5mm headphone jack converter, and that way if you do have some old earphones with you, you can just use those with this. On the right edge, you get the volume rocker and an extremely conveniently placed power and lock key, which is also the fingerprint sensor. And I love this implementation. I love physical fingerprint sensors because they're just so fast, they're accurate, and you know exactly where they are. And here at the top, I think that's an infrared LED. So you can use this as a remote for your devices like air conditioners, television, set-top boxes, and so on. And since we're talking about design, let's also look at the bezels. They're pretty much there. They're quite apparent and they're not as thin as some other phones in the same category. So if you look at the OnePlus 7, you'll see that the bezels are a lot thinner. And here they're a bit more obvious. It does remind me a lot of the Galaxy S10e. The phone does ship with a screen protector applied by default, so that's a good thing. Also, there's no mention of IP68 rating, so it's definitely not officially waterproof. But I'm guessing all phones by now have some level of water resistance, but I would still be very careful and not risk the Honor 20 getting wet. Alright, now let's move into the software. It's running Android 9 Pie and has Honor's Maigc UI 2.1, which as you can see is very similar to the iPhone style, where all the apps reside on the home screen and not inside an app drawer, like we see in a lot of Android smartphones. But again, that's something you can, just download a launcher and you can change that behavior if you want. Launching and closing of apps, all of that seems to be fairly quick, so not as fast as the OnePlus 7 though. Now if you pull down the notification panel, here you can see a couple of inbuilt features. So it's got a built-in screen recorder, quick wireless projection connect, a button for taking screenshot. And if you go further, you will see there's an ultra power saving mode, there's do not disturb, there's also a bike ride mode. So, it takes care of notifications coming in from left, right, and center. Now you can go into settings and customize or personalize even further to, better suit your personal preferences. For example, you can apply themes to your phone and make it look different every day. So, there are a bunch of categories in there and there would be a ton of themes inside these, so just go ahead and apply. Within settings, you'll also find a bunch of shortcuts and gestures that make using the Honor 20 a lot easier and fun. So definitely try those out as well. Now you can obviously hide the notch if you don't like it. So you could just, make a switch and it's going to create a black band behind it. But I prefer the default and you just sort of get used to it very quickly. Two things I want to point out is that the Honor 20 does not have Dolby Atmos sound experience. I mean, it truly changes the way you experience sound, especially if you've got your earphones connected and, you're looking at a movie on Netflix or YouTube or listening to music or even gaming. Now, I know that OnePlus, the Samsung Galaxy phones, and Oppo Reno, all three have Dolby Atmos mode. So I would love to see Honor have that on their phone. And also, there is no dark theme. I love that feature, especially with Android 9 Pie. I mean, sure, you could still go into themes and maybe you could get a theme that's dark in nature, so it does change the UI a bit, but it's not natively built into it, and I sort of miss that. And in terms of biometrics and security, it's got Face Unlock and Fingerprint Unlock, both of which are crazy fast. I'm using Face Unlock right now. It's got AI Face Unlock, which I think unlocks in 0.064 of a second. And the fingerprint sensor is just insanely fast. I mean, you just have to have a light tap and it will unlock the device instantly. And now let's talk about the display. So it's got a 6.26-inch IPS LCD FHD Plus display, which is actually pretty good. IPS LCD screens have a very natural look and they aren't as overly saturated as AMOLED displays, which is my favorite by the way, but these are pretty good too. And it's FHD Plus, so it's sharp, it's crisp, and anything more than this resolution does not really matter much to the naked eye because you won't be able to tell the difference. And be rest assured that, whether you're experiencing HD games or HD videos, you would in its full glory on this phone. And by the way, if you go into display settings, you also get an option to reduce the resolution. So, that way you can save more battery. So smart resolution automatically does that for you. But if you still want to manually set yourself to a lower resolution, you could do that. And now let's talk about the performance. I've already spoken about the processor and the RAM on the Honor 20. And to put things into perspective, I also thought I'll compare other phones in the same segment and their performance benchmark scores. And while the Honor 20 score might be lower than the Asus Zenfone 6 and the OnePlus 7, but in terms of performance and daily use, I don't think you would really feel that much of a difference. I've been using it for a while and I don't really feel that it slows down. But let's just play a few HD games and see how that pans out on the Honor 20. The first game I tried was Asphalt 9, and as you can see, it's actually pretty smooth. I mean, I did not experience any issues. The phone did get a little warm, like a very little warmth at the back, but otherwise there was no issue with the gameplay. It was smooth all the way from the beginning till the end, and the response to touch was also quite nice. So yeah, I mean, sure, it's not as smooth as the OnePlus 7 Pro, but guys, that's a 90Hz display. This is a regular 60Hz display. So I was playing Modern Combat 5, which actually is pretty well optimized for all phones, whether it's low-end, mid-range, or high-end. And it's playing phenomenally well on the Honor 20 too. I mean, you can look at all the shadows, the textures, the response to touch, all of that is pretty stunning. So I'm actually enjoying this a lot. And of course, I had to try PUBG. The good part is that the graphics were set to high graphics by default by the game, so the game does think the phone is worthy enough to render graphics in highest detail. And rightly so, if you see, let me just brighten up the screen a bit. There you go. The overall graphics look really good. I love the details here, the shadows and the way they're, popping up. The textures are pretty good. The response to touch could be a little better, actually. But again, I'm just, I've been using the OnePlus 7 Pro, so maybe I'm just being a little biased. But yeah, I really don't think there's a problem. Look at the sky, the solar flares, good detail, right? So no issues there, really. The colors could have definitely been a little better, but I think it's a lot to do with the IPS LCD display. It's not a Super AMOLED, but the game does look quite nice. Unless you really compare it to another phone on the side, you would not be able to tell the difference. So, just look at these clouds go by, look at the detail at the land at the bottom. And yeah, it's just, all of this is really good. And you really can't complain much. Would I still recommend this over the OnePlus 7? Maybe not. I mean, there's just a sense of smoothness that comes with OnePlus 7 when you're playing. And that's something I can't articulate. But if you were to just pick up this phone and play PUBG or Asphalt 9 or even Modern Combat, you really wouldn't have any complaints either. I mean, it's just going to play it really smooth, and that's the truth of it. And now to the most important piece, the camera. A quad camera setup. I mean, you get everything under the sun in the smartphone photography world. 4 lenses, a primary high-resolution 48 megapixel lens, a 16 megapixel ultra-wide lens, a 2 megapixel depth sensor, and a 2 megapixel macro lens. So let's go over each lens one by one, and I'll also show you some samples that I took using this phone. Let's first talk about the 48 megapixel primary lens. Now, if you open the software, the camera software, and go into settings, go into resolution and you'll see 48 megapixel AI ultra clarity mode. It's not turned on by default, but if you do, make sure that you only take pictures that are not moving, you are not moving, and you've got good lighting. Essentially, you can take a picture with a lot of detail. Let's say I zoom in. Look at the Horizon Plaza text. I can zoom in further and see I do not lose detail. Another example, I shot this building in, with the sky. I zoomed in pretty good. And then I can zoom in further and I still do not lose a lot of information. But if you were to shoot using the regular mode that, that's factory set on this phone, I think they're still pretty good. Now, I'm just going to leave the download link to all of these images in the description below. And, I will just let you download and check them out for yourself. But I think the shots came out pretty good. It's a pretty decent camera. And of course, I'm not comparing it to, the Galaxy S10 or the OnePlus 7 Pro. But I think it still did a very good job. Honor's also been talking about their night mode that uses AIS to really give you some amazing, stunning night shots. I haven't tried that yet, but just thought something I'd put out there for you to know. Now, we can also go into ultra wide mode, and when you do that, it basically expands your field of view. So you see how I can see more of cars and the buildings on the right? Yeah, that's what it does. I know you know about it, so I'm just going to move on to portrait shots. This is the mode that allows you to create blurs in the background, but it always looks for faces. So every time you go into portrait mode, it's not going to take a shot unless you have a face in front. So if you want to shoot an object with a blurred background, you'll have to go into more and then into aperture mode. And now you can set the aperture value. So the lower you go, the more blurred the background becomes. And I did try here in the studio and also a bit like outside. And let me just show you a couple of samples how they look. So this is how this looked. It's pretty nice, but I just thought, you could have that in regular portrait as well. I don't know why I have to go into aperture mode for that, but in a way it also gives you a little bit more control. So there's a pro and cons to it. And the last lens that I want to talk about is the macro lens. It's probably a lens that you will not use too much and also something that you wouldn't find in a lot of smartphones out there. Essentially, you can get really, really close to your subject and take a picture. But because it's 2 megapixels, the quality may not be very high if you don't have good lighting. So definitely you can have some fun with this lens if you want to, but just make sure that you've got the lighting right. And it's got a 32 megapixel front-facing camera, which is actually pretty good. It has a beauty filter set by default, so you might want to lower that down because I find those really cosmetic. But yeah, after you've done that, it's pretty good. You could also use the studio lighting, something that I think the iPhone got in, but it's kind of really sad. So I don't know if you really want to use it, but yeah, it's there for you to try. And lastly, coming to the video shooting capabilities. So it can shoot 4K videos, but at 30 frames per second only. And it shoots full HD videos at 60 frames per second, so you do get super smooth videos. And here's a sample video. It's shot in full HD at 60 FPS, hence it's really smooth. You're also watching this video at 60 FPS, so you do get a pretty true picture. But I did find a few issues. One, it would not autofocus on itself very quickly. I had to tap, and that too I had to tap like twice to get the focus right. But the camera does tend to overexpose the video at times. So, I'm sure you can see that too. But yeah, that's something they could probably fix in a software update, but that's pretty much about it. Of course, you may have doubts about buying an Honor phone given the ban that US has on Huawei products. But just so you know, Huawei has issued an official statement stating that the products that have been sold and are in stock globally will not be affected. So you will continue to get security updates. You know that this phone is going to get Android Q as well. And, all Google apps like Gmail and YouTube, all of those, even Play Store, would be supported. Also, just so you know, Google has been trying to get an exemption on, the ban that Huawei has. So fingers crossed for that, and let's hope that it works out. It's going to be a win-win for all of us.